thank you everybody for joining our money management training for the Aging Services Network, specifically on credit and scam and fraud prevention. Big shout out to People's United, a division of M&T Bank, the folks there for giving us some great content, and the Executive Office of Elder Affairs for helping set this up. My name is Jessica Keegan. I use she, her pronouns. I am also coming to you from the Office of Economic Empowerment. So up on the agenda today is I will give you some welcome remarks about what to expect, things about the Office of Economic Empowerment, especially if you haven't been with us before. Then we'll transition to a welcome video from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, and then we'll get to the meat of it with the the scam and fraud workshop. Please ignore that, with Dutch. And then we'll go on to a Q&A. So just to give you some context, the Office of Economic Empowerment creates programs and resources that give people the skills they need to understand the ramifications of their financial decision-making and give them access to resources to help empower themselves. Our goals have been to ensure wage equality, provide economic empowerment opportunities, and develop financial education programs for all age groups, from our youngest children to our oldest adults. Our department is unique because we are able to raise private dollars through a 501c3 attached to our office, the Economic Empowerment Trust Fund. So just to let you know, since this is a Zoom webinar, it will be recorded. All questions will be anonymous, but this is a great point to raise that this will be uploaded on the OEE socials after this, so you can share this with your friends. And I'll put a link in the chat for the last webinar that we had, which you can also review. And as for housekeeping, this is different than a meeting. This is a webinar, so you won't be able to turn on your camera and view the other participants, but you can use the chat to talk to the hosts and use the Q&A to ask questions. We'll be having Amanda Moore monitor those. So if you have any questions, no matter how silly, definitely feel free to put those in. Once this ends, once I hit that end meeting button, an exit poll will pop up. Please answer it. And we hope to see you at our next one. Let's add in this video. Here we go.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Chen. It is my honor to serve as the Secretary of the Massachusetts Executive Office of Elder Affairs. We call it EOEA. At EOEA, we are committed to ensuring older adults and their caregivers have options to live and thrive in the communities of their choice. And that includes ensuring they have the financial ability to do so. I want to thank you for taking the time to participate in this money management training that's offered to the Aging Services Network. EOEA is pleased to partner with the Treasurer's Office of Economic Empowerment and the People's United Bank to offer this free education session. We know there are a variety of factors that contribute to an individual's economic situation, including wages, inflation, and emergencies. In this training, you will learn about budgeting, credit management, and fraud prevention. These are helpful tools when navigating one's professional and personal life with economic security. Thank you again for participating, and I hope you find today's training helpful and informative.
Great, and thank you again to the folks at the Executive Office of Elder Affairs for that wonderful welcome meeting. I'll take this time to stop sharing my screen so we can switch over to Dutch and the folks at People's M&T for their presentation. While we're transitioning, let me just pop up this poll just to get a grasp on who is participating today. So go ahead and answer this while Dutch switches over.
All right, I am switched over. Just want to make sure I see a nodding head from Amanda. I think we are good to go. Awesome.
Perfect. I'll end this poll. Thank you for answering. And go ahead, take it away. Glad everything is working.
Same here, and welcome everybody. Thank you again for taking some time on a beautiful day Hopefully right after lunch, you're still full of energy to spend the next hour with our team. Again, my name is Dutch Kolthoff. I am the Financial Empowerment Officer for People's United Bank, now a division of M&T Bank, and starting September 5th, you'll see the name M&T Bank all over Massachusetts. And I'm together with my colleague, Amanda Moore. We are both truly honored and excited to be able to partner with the Office of Economic Empowerment, as well as the Office of Elder Affairs, to talk to you guys and share some additional resources around financial education. If you joined us last week on a webinar, some of this information might sound familiar. And if you didn't, please note that that webinar was also recorded on a video. So after today, if you find the topics interesting, you'll be able to watch the video. I'm an immigrant from the Netherlands. I moved to the States when I was 21 years of age. And I was very lucky. I had a very strong support system to show me the many differences that the US banking system had compared to the European, in my case, the banking system of the Netherlands. I made a lot of mistakes. So ever since I joined the banking workforce, I've been very passionate about sharing financial education with as many people as possible. And frankly, the COVID pandemic has only highlighted that need for financial education. So I hope that we'll be able to share some great resources and tips with you today. And before I get started, I just want to share some of the additional goals and objectives around Q&A. So from the video that was shared, we hope that we can provide you with additional knowledge, additional tools that can help empower you to support all the populations you work with, like the senior populations, unfortunately, is often a victim and is often specifically targeted from financial harm, financial fraud. But we also hope that these resources and tools are going to be helpful for yourself. It's going to give you an opportunity to learn. It's going to give you an opportunity to develop some fundamental skills that will aid you in your role as a home care worker. It's such important work. Again, we also want to make sure that you know that other resources are always available to you. Please check out the websites like the Financial Life MA website, the different websites that the Commonwealth offers to give you resources. What this webinar is not meant to do, and what we're not designed to do, is turn you into financial experts or financial advisors and offer you any type of certification. Right? We want to provide you with more education on financial terms and strategies, but please continue to visit trusted financial experts and advisors to review your own personal scenario, to review any needs that the elder community might have. Again, this is not a certification. We're not all of a sudden say, all right, go out and share this knowledge as if you are a financial advisor. There's a lot of great experts in your local network, in your branch network that could help you. When it comes to Q&A, we do have the chat function open. We do have the Q&A function open. So throughout the webinar, if you have a specific question, please go right ahead. My colleague Amanda will try to answer that as quickly as possible. Any question we cannot answer, we'll try to share those via email after the meeting. And my only request is that you do not use the chat function as a sidebar, as a side conversation. We've all been on Zoom meetings the last 2 years, and there might be a scenario that you've witnessed where a chat turns into a side webinar or a side conversation. And I just ask that you only use it to to put in a question. We will answer the questions and then hopefully be able to dive into the topic a little bit more. So that's the goals, that's the objectives, just a little housekeeping. And I say we get started right away and move on to the full presentation. And today our topic is going to be around credit reporting and credit score, as well as share some resources around identity theft protection and share some of the common scams and fraud attempts that you might see both in your personal life as well as in your work life when you deal with the elderly. We're going to share some final resources and then next steps for a future topic. And all of that should be done by 2 o'clock. So let's get started with credit scores and credit reports. And just to make sure that we're all still engaged and everybody is on, let's start with a poll. Go right ahead and put up the poll, Jessica. And we're going to ask you, everybody, how well do you know your credit score? Do you know exactly what your score is? You have a rough idea? You don't know the score? Or this is the first time you're like, credit score? What is that all about? I don't know. Go right ahead and enter your vote, and then we'll move on from there in just a second. All right, Jessica, I'll say let's close it up and let's see what we have had. Oh, very good. About half that knows the exact score And another really good number on 41%. So over 90%, this is very unusual, but I'm happy to see it, have a decent idea what their credit score should be. And maybe you use some of the tools and the resources that we're going to be talking about. That's actually a very good number. We normally don't see that. So good, happy to know that you've taken advantage of learning and build more about your credit score. So what is a credit score? It's a 3-digit rating that tells a lender how likely you are to repay debt. So there's different credit score ratings. The most common credit score are the Advantage score and the FICO score. They're both similar. They use different ratings anywhere from the mid 500s to over 800. And they're used by different lenders and different companies to make a decision on the ability to extend credit to you as a person. Most financial institutions use the FICO score for the purpose of extending credit. You just have to be careful. You might very often see specific credit offers or advertising where rates are offered based on a minimum credit score. And it often needs to be 740 or higher. So be careful when you apply for an offer. Read the fine print on the amount, read the amount of on the terms offered if your credit score is not yet in that higher range. Often the amount of interest that you pay on a loan, the interest that you pay on a credit card, the total amount that you might be approved for is based on the initial credit score, which the lenders feel is a certain indicator of your ability to repay a debt. The credit score is calculated in a few different ways, and I actually love this screen, and we might stick on this a little bit longer. So there's a lot of misconception on the different parts that make up your credit score. And this is something that came up when I first moved to the States, and my first job was actually in retail. I worked for Best Buy. And if you ever gone to a retail store or a store like a Best Buy and Macy's, very often you have the ability to get an additional discount or get specific payment terms when you apply for the specific retail credit card store. Now, I found out that not everybody was approved. And sometimes people would get angry. They'd be like, you know what? I got great credit. Look at this. I got a wallet. I have 10 different credit cards. That shows you that I have great credit score. And I should get approved, and I don't understand. And sometimes people would just leave because they were upset, even with all these credit cards, that they felt they had good credit. So it's important to understand. And as you can see, the number of credit lines, the number of credit cards, the number of loans is not a specific aspect of a credit score. Just having a lot of credit cards does not mean you have good credit, does not mean you should have a lot of credit cards, right? In fact, when you look at how a credit score is calculated, the two most important pieces are the total amount of outstanding balances based on the credit limit. That's 30% of a score. And very important is the payment history, right? Missing a payment on a loan, missing a payment on a credit card really impacts your score. It's 1/3 of your overall score. And missing a payment can actually reflect on your overall credit score and your report for up to 7 years. So having a lower number of loans and credit cards with lower outstanding balances and a long history of paying these on time is more important than having many loans, many credit cards can be more important, with the chance of higher outstanding balances and also the ability to lose track of a payment. Having multiple cards that might not always be used might affect your ability to remember that a payment was due. And that could really impact your score. It's also important to know that new credit impacts your score, right, by 10%. So be careful. Don't just apply for every card at a different store when you have the opportunity or are being offered a card. Same thing with mail-in offers. Make sure that whatever discount is offered is worth your focus on your credit score. Maybe use an existing card that has rewards. Maybe use an existing card that has cashback options. And if you're starting to build your credit, if you're in the beginning phases of building or rebuilding credit, just say, right, declined cards appear on your report and search history, as well as the length of credit history or the fact that it's new credit. It can really impact your overall score if you get off the wrong foot right from the beginning. So, but I thought it was interesting to see how credit is rated and how important the total amounts owned and your payment history are going through a credit score. Now, there's 3 different credit bureaus that report onto a credit score: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. All 3 are fantastic, and different lenders use different bureaus. So you might notice if you pull and look at the different credit reporting, that not all credit bureaus have the exact same information on you. right? Since different lenders use different credit bureaus, they are supposed to report inquiries, they are supposed to report activity, they are supposed to report payment history, but maybe once in a while they forget one, maybe they're more comfortable using one of the three. So it's important for you to kind of take a look at the three different credit bureaus that are out there and make sure that your info is consistent. I'll talk about that in a second. You have the ability to ask for your credit score directly from the credit bureaus. Often there's a fee for that, right? The credit bureaus normally charge a fee up to $8 to $10 to get your specific credit score. However, there's a lot of other online sources where you can get your credit score for free, especially after the COVID pandemic. And if you currently have a credit card already, many credit cards, at least quarterly, sometimes even monthly, offer you the opportunity to take a look at your credit score. They might show you a ranking of how your credit score historically is improving or declining. And very likely there's going to be those credit cards, existing loan companies, and also other apps where you have the information or get the ability to look at your credit score for free. So take a look at that. And again, if you're 90% of you have a good idea of what your credit score is at, I assume that quite often you take advantage of that. And that's a very easy and good thing to do. So the credit score links directly to your overall credit report, right? The score is based on your ability to repay. And that score is then based on all the information that shows up on a credit report. So a credit report is a snapshot of your credit profile, including your credit history, for at least the last 7 years, sometimes a little bit longer. And it shows the different credit loans, lines, cards, any information really that would be needed for a lender to make a credit decision and see if they feel you have the ability to repay a loan. And the three credit bureaus often give you the ability to look at the credit report. And in fact, by law, which is fantastic, you have the ability to get a copy of your credit report each year for free from annualcreditreport.com. Before the pandemic, I would have recommended that you would set yourself a reminder. If you watched my webinar last week, you know I'm all about automation and reminders and alerts. And what I would have recommended is at the beginning of the year, you would have picked Experian. 4 months later, you picked Equifax, and 4 months later, you picked TransUnion. And every 4 months, you would then have a good overview of what is available and if your credit report is accessible. You can also get the reports if there's fraud, if you need to apply for welfare, or if you're denied on a loan. But one of the, I don't know if you can call it a benefit, but new rules during the pandemic actually have made it possible to request your report more often. You can go as often as once a week, if I'm correct, and actually get your report now for free. But I don't know if that's necessary. At least quarterly, I would recommend you take a look at your credit report and just make sure that there's nothing new, nothing unusual, nothing that shouldn't be on the report. And another misconception that's important to know, checking your own credit report, checking your own credit score does not hurt your credit. So you can be completely comfortable in pulling your credit report. It's completely okay for you to inquire on your own credit score. An inquiry is fine as long as you don't actually start a lot or start a new credit application, right? So you can pull a copy of your report, take a look at your score. It does not affect your score in a negative way. Your credit report contains a lot of information, not just on credit accounts, not just on your credit cards and your loans, when an account was opened, when an account was closed. It would also share information around lawsuits and bankruptcies, judgments, delinquent or unpaid taxes. And that information is normally reported for up to 7 years. Some public records, especially tax, delinquency, or bankruptcies, can actually stay longer and impact your ability to get credit. But most financial experts would recommend to avoid bankruptcy as much as possible. There might be other credit negotiation options available to you, but that would be something that would continue to appear on your credit report. It'll show your name and birth date, your social security number, your current address, as well as previous addresses that are listed, name of a spouse if you had any co-credits, and also a history of employment. Again, all decisions or all items that would impact a decision around credit history and repayment. And the last piece that's often important to take a look at that people maybe skim over is credit inquiries. Organizations, people, agencies that are requested to verify your credit in the past 2 years. There's a difference between the credit inquiry we just talked about. It's called a soft inquiry, where you yourself look at your report, or a company that wants to send you a pre-approval might request a soft inquiry. It could be a cell phone company. It could be future employers. Where they just want to make sure that overall the reporting looks as if there's no major red flags. A hard inquiry is linked to an actual application, and that will impact your score based on the decision, right? But you might, when you look at your credit report, you might see that there's different inquiries from sometimes even National Grid, sometimes even your cell phone company. Even existing credit cards might just do a soft inquiry just to make sure nothing really has changed or there's no red flags. So when you pull your report, and you can save it on your computer, you can print it out. It's like 30 pages in my case, but so I'll save it. Pay extra attention to those inquiries, right? Are there any inquiries that you're not familiar with? Are delinquencies that are listed, are they correct? And take a look at the date. I've said multiple times now that there's a 7-year window many times for items to remain on your credit report. So you want to make sure that the dates that some of these records appear on your report are correct, especially when an account was opened. If unfortunately you went into some type of delinquency, you want to make sure that those reporting dates are correct. Same thing with public records. And again, take a look at credit requests. If you try to get a car lease and you see back in October and you see that there was an inquiry in October for that car company, fantastic. If all of a sudden 6 months later the same inquiry comes back up, you might want to call the dealership and just say, hey, I'm not shopping for cars right now. Can you please not do that? Because it might affect my credit. So look at the different inquiry requests. If you notice items being incorrect, if you see missing items, don't just let them sit there. It's very easy to ask for a correction or start a dispute. There's 2 ways to do it. And in both cases, you just have to make sure that you can provide records if requested, and that you can provide proof of a dispute or an incorrect item. So you can write a letter to the credit reporting agency by certified mail, request a return receipt, send an additional letter to the information provider. So if you notice that a credit card was listed incorrectly, you can let both the credit bureau and the credit card company know that there was an error. The other thing that you can do, which is quite a bit easier, right on the reporting website, normally the credit bureaus allow you to dispute online. There's a dispute button right next to each item on your credit report if you watch it online. And you normally have the ability to dispute an item, upload through your computer if you can, a document or a bill or a receipt that says, hey, I think this is an error. And as you can see, the credit reporting bureaus are required to respond to you normally within 30 days to let you know how they received that information and or if it was fixed. So I wouldn't let it sit, especially if you're working on building your credit or rebuilding your credit. You want to make sure that you have a good starting point. And from a certain day forward, you know for a fact that every time that you looked at your credit report, the information you provided that's on that report is correct and good to do. So strategies to improve credit. Now that you know your score, now that you've seen your report and you've made sure that everything that's on the report looks somewhat correct, just want to share some strategies, some ideas to make sure that your credit stays great, stays in those numbers that will give you the best possible rates. And at the end of the day, would save you the most money. And we often get the question, is credit important? And it kind of depends a little bit on the different stages in your life. But most of the time, if you're looking to purchase a home, if you're looking to lease a car, anytime you're looking to borrow, it's important that you want to save money and get the best possible rate, the best possible interest from the bank. And your credit score and the better credit score would give you the best possible rate. And if you're looking at a mortgage on a 15 or 30-year mortgage, a 1% improvement in your rate can save you a lot of money over a long term of years. So if you have great credit, continue to do some of these steps. If you're looking to improve your credit, start thinking about some of these steps that I'm going to share with you right now. And that is, try not to use more than 30% of the credit that's available to you. So don't max out your credit cards. Don't fully use your credit cards if you have the ability not to. And if you looked at our budgeting webinar from last week, we gave you some ideas on how to pay down on a credit card through either the snowball or the avalanche method. Maybe use some of your savings. But we tried to give you some ideas to make sure that there's, within your monthly savings plan, there's enough room to make your credit card payments, pay for other items, and hopefully not max out your credit card. There's going to be a repeat option here, just like last week. There's a few things I'm going to say many times, and this is one of them. Pay your bills on time, right? Don't have late payments. Make sure that you pay your bill when it's due, within that window of time that it's due, so you don't have that hit on your credit that shows that you had a late payment. Try to pay them each month in full if possible, so you pay less interest altogether. Pay off your loans on time. Same as pay your bills on time, pay your credit cards on time. Since new credit is important for your overall credit score, do not apply for multiple loans and credit cards at the same time. Do a little research. There's a lot of internet research. There's a lot of great companies that offer the ability to compare different credit cards, to compare different loan options before you actually make an application. So instead of applying for 4 different credit cards to see which would approve you or which one would give you the best possible rate or discounts, do a little research, take a look at what the best rewards or travel or points card might be, and use that one to apply. Debt management plan to reduce debt, our savings plan. We talked about that just now and just this last week. Have a plan in place, stick to the plan to make sure that you pay on time, get those monthly reminders, get those automated reminders, so that you know that you're following a plan, and you can automatically work on both your savings and the reduction of your debt, and continue to look at your credit report for accuracy. At least quarterly, you have the ability, pull one of the credit reports, and just make sure that nothing there is incorrect or all of a sudden appear that shouldn't be there. There's different options nowadays, and there's different laws that are looking to come through where credit bureaus are also starting to look and improve their own credit score rating for you based on rent history, bill payment history. You all might have heard about the boost. So that's an option you can research as well. Is it possible for you to have some of your automatic payments? They need to be automated from your bank account, but if you have automated payments to pay some of your bills, some of the credit agencies actually take that history and add it as a boost to your credit score. So again, a little bit of research with those 3 different companies. Just find out, hey, do you guys offer a boost for payment history, and see if that can be added. This is just a good time to remind you, if you have any suggestions, tips, if you're like, oh, wow, it'd be fantastic. This is something that really has worked for me. You can add those in the chat function. And again, Amanda can respond if you have questions on it, or we can share them with everyone afterwards. So those are some good ideas. Those are some great ideas to find out where your credit score is at, how to look at your credit score and make sure you keep or improve your credit score. If you need to repair your credit, if you've made some mistakes in the past, or you're like, man, I wish Dutch had talked to me when I was younger and I started my credit, here's some ideas for repairing. But one, obviously, continue to monitor it, pay your bills on time. There are credit counseling agencies, very well reputable credit agencies that are listed here that can help you with some ideas around counseling, that can talk about how you might be able to consolidate some of these, how you can do a correct payment setup without having to worry about going into bankruptcy. And another piece, just like last week, I would recommend that you visit your financial institution and talk about some of the repairing credit options that they might have available. Many banks and credit unions offer what they call a secured loan or secured credit card, where you would take some of your savings. Normally it's $250. Sometimes it's $500. It can be more. But you put that money in a savings account, and that money gets kind of blocked as security. And against that security, the bank might be able to offer you a credit card. So you can start building and rebuilding your credit. It's a great idea for rebuilding. It's also a good idea if you have a younger person that is looking for ways to build credit. You can either ask them to be on a loan together with you, or they might be able to get a secured card. Very safe way to start building credit or repairing credit. And again, a good first step. Visit your financial institution. Be honest about the fact that you might be in a repairing credit scenario, and if they have any type of products that could help with that. That's what we're here for. There's a lot of companies online that might offer you to help if you need help with credit repair. And I just want to make sure that you are very, very aware that some of those, unfortunately, could be fraudulent. And so anytime that there's a credit repair scam, very likely they would ask you upfront to pay a fee. They might promise you that all negative information would be deleted. They might warn you not to contact the credit bureau directly, which we now know you can do. So just be careful if you're in a scenario that credit repair needs to be fixed, that you make sure that you research that company, or again, maybe start with your financial institution close by. So I heard that my sound is a little droppy, so I'm coming a little bit closer, and let me know if that helps. And then we're going to go mute, and then hopefully it gets a little bit better. I'm sorry for that. I'm using a computer audio this time, so I hopefully that this gets better. Just sent me a face or a high up if it is. We are at the last part of our. Let me just make sure again. It works. So I'm coming closer to the mic. And we have audio difficulty. We are at the end of our credit repair section. So we have heard about the importance of credit scores and reports, how you can obtain information for credit scores and reports, how to get some strategies to credit or improve your credit, and how to protect your credit from incorrect frauds and claims. So we're going to move on to the next topic, and I'm going to see to make sure that my audio is better or correct. This is a very important topic and a very important piece, not just for you and your personal life, but also for the elder population that you deal with. So my sound is still choppy. Amanda, I see your text and I appreciate it. Do you want to see if you can jump in and take over? Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So I am Dutch's cohort over here supporting him. Hopefully you can hear me well. Rose and Allison, I will ask you to let me know if the audio is not clear. So we're going to go ahead and Dutch, I'm going to ask you if you don't mind to continue to proceed through the slides for me, because I think you were driving them. But we're going to go ahead and talk about identity theft. And so I don't know if we have a poll in our Zoom, but I would love to ask these questions that are right here on the screen before we move forward. So I want you to tell me if you can. Oh, perfect. There we go. So go ahead and answer those poll questions with true or false. So really quick answer. So there is a victim of identity theft every 2 seconds. Do you think that's true, or do you think that's false? And then also, you are more likely to have your identity stolen than to have your car stolen or your home burglarized. So do you think that those are true and false? And then we will go ahead and pull that down and let's see what our results are, and then we can move on. So let's see what everybody is thinking. Okay, so almost everyone thought that both were true, and that is in fact correct. Perfect. All right, so and the reality is, what we want you to know whenever we share this workshop is that identity theft is very common. You or someone you know has been affected by it. And so if you are impacted by identity theft, please do not feel like there is any shame in that. Instead, let people know who can help you, reach out for support if you need it, and let's get it corrected, because it is easier to correct it if you jump at it sooner than if you wait. So we're going to talk for a moment just a little bit about identity theft and identity fraud in general. Identity fraud is when someone's personal information is used to access money, whereas identity theft can happen when a person's information is accessed, even if it isn't used for financial gain. So between the two of these, most everyone is impacted. And as we move to the next slide, what we want you to know is that the impact, I want you to understand the impact. And so this slide is a great example of that. When we talk to victims of identity theft in a survey through an ID theft center, this is some of what they had to say. So some of the responses not only are that they had to rely on family and friends for assistance, or maybe they had to borrow money to help pay for expenses, use savings, or even end up needing government assistance. Those pieces, I think most of us tend to expect. If you're impacted by identity theft or identity fraud, maybe your financial situation was impacted and so you need some help. what we want you to think about is, why would your job opportunities be impacted, and why would your ability to qualify for a home loan be impacted? If you think back to the section on credit scores and reports that Dutch just covered, we know why you might not qualify for a home loan. Because if you have some identity theft, particularly if accounts were established in your name, or if there were some impact there to your credit cards, perhaps they were using them, then that could certainly impact your credit score, and that would affect your ability to be approved for a home loan. However, what we want you to know is that it impacts more than just your ability to get a loan. It might impact your ability to secure an apartment for rent. It might impact your ability to secure a job. It might impact the rate of the car insurance that you pay. So we really want you to be sure that you understand that full impact. And if we look at, what is it? What is it that they are going to do with your identity when they steal it, when the thieves get a hold of it? Well, they're going to make those transactions. They're going to open those new fraud accounts, perhaps. They might even commit fraud or cyber crimes. And then another piece that we don't often think about is the medical side. So they could be using your identity to gain access to prescriptions or receive medical treatment. And as we move forward from here, now we know what the thieves do with our identity. We're going to move to the next slide, I think. There we go. Oh, okay. So there are also a couple of special cases that we like to touch on. Child identity theft, believe it or not, happens more than you would think. You might think to check your credit score, your credit report, as Dutch just went through how to do that. But what's important is that we're also checking it for our children. They are assigned Social Security numbers in this country as well, and so therefore their credit can be impacted. Sometimes we find that thieves have opened accounts using the information of a minor, and we might not find that out until the minor is of age and trying to secure credit for themselves. So it's important that we're checking our children's credit reports as well. And then when it comes to medical identity theft, I think one of the easiest things that you can do is to make sure that you are looking at your explanation of benefits. You receive those, stacks of paper in envelopes anytime you go to a doctor, if you have medical insurance that explains your explanation of benefits. It shows what treatments you received on what dates from what doctors. Take the time to review those and make sure that that's accurate. And also, when you're sitting down with your doctor and you're reviewing your medical history, make sure that it's accurate. If there are discrepancies, it could be a case of medical identity theft. And then when it comes to tax identity theft, this is something that we always see a little bit of every year. Once thieves have your Social Security number and your name, they can file a tax return using your identity. And so if you are expecting to receive a tax return, if you're expecting to receive a refund, you could be surprised when you go to file it that you get something back from the IRS that says your taxes have already been filed. And so that can be a concern as well. And how do you combat that? I would say, in addition to protecting your information, you can go ahead and move forward. File early. File early. So what can be used to steal your identity? So this is kind of a list of all of your biographical data that you want to protect. Not only your Social Security number and your name and your birth date, the whole list here, being sure to keep those documents safe and secure, locked up at home. I always take the time during these workshops to tell you, check in your wallet. If your Social Security card is in your wallet, move it right now. You don't need that with you. You don't need to provide that number to people. In most cases, yes, if you are establishing a new line of credit or you're establishing an account with a bank, you will need to provide it. If you are applying for a job and you're filling out paperwork, you will need to provide it, but you do not need to give that number out to most anyone else. And then you want to make sure that you keep not only your debit cards and your credit cards, but your personal checks safe and secure. I encourage people, as Dutch recommends, to pay online as much as you can. Sorry about that. Pay online as often as you can so that you're protecting not only your personal information, you're making sure that your payments get there on time, but that you're not providing your signature if you don't need to. So when you send out a paper check, not only are you sharing your account information, of course your address is typically on those checks, but you also are, of course, providing a copy of your signature if you've written that check. So it really is best if you are able to pay online. And monitoring services out there, which we'll get to a little bit later, but there are monitoring services out there that can check all of this information for free for you. You can certainly have access to paid services as well, but we will get to that. And so then as we move on, let's talk about where some of this information is accessed. So I think we're all familiar with the concept of your general theft, right? You want to make sure that you're protecting your information, protecting your wallet, your cell phone, et cetera, from being stolen. But also you want to make sure that the dumpster diving is thwarted. So what is dumpster diving? You may have heard this before. When we throw out our garbage, people may go through that. And so this is why we talk about the importance of shredding your information, shredding your documents before you toss them out. Shoulder surfing is something that we could all very easily fall victim of. I want you to think about how many times perhaps you've stood in line at the grocery store and you've decided to check your balance to see if you should, pay with your debit card or use the cash, whatever. If you're signing into your account and someone happens to be looking over your shoulder, they may not only see how you unlock your phone, what your passwords are for your banking, but also just more information than you want to share with them. So in any kind of public scenario, you want to be careful about shoulder surfing. And then, of course, mail fraud. So mail fraud can cover a lot of different areas, but what I typically talk about here is to say you want to watch out to make sure you're not missing any mail. If you are anticipating receiving some kind of a statement or bill in the mail and it doesn't come, that could be a concern that perhaps someone has gotten a hold of that, and then they've, of course, gained access to your information. And the same as if you send something to a company or a person and they haven't received it. Another reason why receiving electronic statements can be a really safe way to do business. And then when we talk about skimming, I love to focus here. It used to be that we talked about skimming when it came to ATMs, but I like to cover skimming when it comes to gas pumps. I feel like more and more the complaints that I hear are from gas pumps. So I'm going to talk about this just for a moment. Skimming is when you are inserting your card into a device. So you think you're standing at a gas pump and you have to put your card in. Your card runs into their machine. That's all fine, well and good, unless a thief has put a skimming device over top of where you insert your card. And when you insert your card, they're collecting that electromagnetic data. And so what I always do whenever I'm approaching, bank ATMs are usually fairly well protected because bank employees are checking those machines regularly. But if I have to use an ATM machine that is not at a bank, or even if it is at a bank, if I have to insert my card anywhere, I always grab a hold of the device, the plastic piece where you're putting your card in, and I wiggle it around. If it is at all loose, I would not insert my card there. And that's how I protect myself when it comes to skimming. Okay, thank you, Dutch. We can go on to the next one. And if there are questions as we move through this rather quickly, please feel free to stick them in the Q&A and we'll be sure to cover them. I'm going to run through these next a little bit faster: phishing scams, telephone scams, elder fraud scams, and text message scams. So this is a common example of a phishing scam when it comes to email. Keep in mind that we also get these, maybe even more so, through text message. So if you take a look at this, you can see that there are some concerning pieces. The customer greeting is very generic. This is supposed to be from a bank, and so you would expect that they would have, this is being emailed to a Jane Smith at Gmail, you would expect that it would have said Dear Jane Smith or Dear Ms. Smith, and it's a generic greeting. The name of the bank is misspelled in the email address where the email is originating. The language is not so professional. And then also the login, where they're asking you to click here to log in, is missing an I. That is also misspelled. Banks are not going to send you an email like this asking you to click to log in. If you ever receive something like this and you're not sure if it's legitimate or not, my recommendation is that you call the company that sent it to you or that you think sent it to you at a number that you know, not a number that's listed in what you received. So call the company and say, to your bank, I received this email. I'm not really sure if it's legitimate or not. They're going to guide you through that. And I feel like we get the same thing with text messages. They're encouraging us to click a link and enter our information. We're just opening ourselves up. Right here is a text scam screen. So this is exactly what I'm talking about. I tend to get them from FedEx. I feel like I get at least one a week. It says it's from FedEx. It's not really from FedEx. So the whole idea of phishing is they are sending it out to a large number of people, hoping that they find someone who is expecting a package or who banks with that bank that's indicated, and they're hoping they find someone who's going to click on that link, or tens of someone. And so this is an exact information. They're talking about your package being delayed. You can click on this link for tracking information. And this is where you can fall victim very easily. So be sure you don't click on links in emails or text messages without verifying. And then of course we do have also common scams with the phone. And so this example is one that I think we have all seen and heard about where it is a lottery. They're calling you to tell you that you've won the lottery. Of course, if you do not play the lottery, that is not something that is going to, that you're going to win. So usually in this case, they tell you they've won the lottery. They need your information so that they can send the check out to you, or so that they can electronically deposit the money into your bank. And of course, then you've given them the information to your account. And sometimes there's even another layer to it where they put in more than what you were supposed to have won, and they need you to pay the taxes from that. And so not only are they, they're putting money in your account, perhaps even, and they're asking for you to send money back. And in reality, that deposit's going to come back. So you might be hit hard in a couple of ways. There might actually be a financial loss in addition to your account information being compromised. So be aware of phone scams. And then there's a couple of other examples I think that we have here when it comes to phone scams, including, yes, this one, often our elderly are targeted when it comes to this. Someone says that they are friends with, or that they are perhaps a long lost relative. They got in trouble. They don't want you to let anyone else know because they are embarrassed about the repercussions of that. And instead, they want you to send them money right away so that they don't end up in jail. Sometimes they'll even say that they're in another country. So in this case, friends with a nephew who needs your help, they're not wanting you to let the parents know. They're wanting you to help them, and people feel that tug at their heartstrings, and they send this money when in fact it's a fraudster all along. So my advice to you is, if you are ever unsure, do your due diligence and check. And then of course, we want to watch out for our basic red flags. Definitely denial of credit for any reason. If you apply for something and you don't receive it, whether it's an extension of credit or a service like a utility or rent, that is a red flag. And then of course, unusual activity as well, like charges on your credit card or your financial account, maybe changes in your credit score. You most likely get those regular updates if you have a credit card with what your regarding your credit report if you have a change. And if it's an unusual change or an unexpected change, then you want to look into that. If you receive any calls from debtors or collection agencies, especially if you do know that you do not owe any funds, or unusual bills and services for products that you don't use or you've never used. And then, of course, any unusual increases in insurance rates or interest rates. And just so that you know, when you receive your credit card bills in the mail, the interest rate is printed on that bill every single month. So I always watch that rate. And if that rate changes, then that is something that you want to be alarmed about. You want to check your credit score, your credit report immediately, and make sure things look okay. Of course, any reports from the IRS that more than one person has filed a tax return using your number, or that wages were received from an unknown source. So sometimes people will apply for a job using your Social Security number, and that information will be reported to the IRS as wages that you have earned. And so that's something else you can watch out for. The medical data that we talked about before with incorrect information regarding bills and or medical history, and then the lost item when it comes to mail or bills. So those are all concerning red flags that we want to dive into right away. How do you protect yourself? Let's talk about some do's and some don'ts. So we want to make sure that we're monitoring our accounts, our credit reports, and our credit score. Dutch shared how you can do that in his last presentation there on credit scores and reports. You want to pull those quarterly, if possible, from one of the bureaus. And then, of course, you want to monitor your financial statements carefully. You want to make sure that those charges that are purchases that are made were, in fact, initiated by you. You want to practice online safety, secure your important documents, be aware of your surroundings, and use a credit monitoring service if at all possible. Talk about don'ts. Let's not use public Wi-Fi to access sensitive information. We're not going to click on any unknown links. If we receive a link that we're not expecting, we're going to call and verify. before we click on that link. And then of course, not opening suspicious attachments as well. Okay. So about those credit monitoring services that I mentioned and identity monitoring services, we know that there are some paid options out there which you can absolutely access. You may want to contact your bank. For example, Dutch and I are with People's United Bank, a division of M&T, and for anyone who has a checking account established with us, we have a free credit monitoring and identity monitoring service available. Your bank, if you bank someplace else, may offer something as well, or you can look at a paid-for version in addition to that. But I highly recommend that because it's not only keeping an eye on your information, but probably has some type of service to offer you some assistance if you need to handle an issue as well. Credit and security freezes are available, which you can do through the credit bureaus. The previous slides that Dutch was sharing, the phone numbers and the websites for TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax were all listed, and you can certainly visit those and put a credit freeze or security freeze on your account as well. And you can list fraud alerts. So these are different ways that you can protect yourself, especially if you're not planning to use credit, meaning establish new credit, make a car purchase, get a new credit card, buy a home in the next year or more. You might want to look into doing one of those freezes. Okay. And so as we wrap up here, we're just looking, I actually don't see any questions in the Q&A, but what I will say is that if you do find yourself in need of some assistance with repairing credit or dealing with something that does look inaccurate, one of the best websites that you can visit is ftc.gov. That's the Federal Trade Commission, ftc.gov, and they will walk you through step by step what you need to do to report identity theft, to handle and resolve the identity theft. All of the steps are listed there. And we hope that you have been able to learn a little bit about the signs of identity theft and fraud, examine the different types of identity theft and fraud, and we hope that we've given you some strategies used to protect yourself and just keep yourself nice and safe. And so with that being said, I am going to turn this back over to the Office of Economic Empowerment and let you all close it out. Thank you so very much for your time today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, both of you, Amanda and Dutch, and everybody. I hope this has been a really good experience that you can take back with you to your communities. I just put a link in the chat to myfinanciallife.org, which is a tool our office created to make sure that you could get information at any time and take little workshops about any sort of topic like scam and fraud, in case you wanted to refresh what you learned, anything from owning a small business to saving for college. So we definitely encourage you to reach out to that site and look into it. I wanted to say thank you again to our partners at People's M&T and also to the folks at the Executive Office of Elder Affairs. After this ends, we are going to have an exit poll. So please make sure you answer that. If you would like to visit more of these in the future, keep an eye on your organization's pages and the Office of Economic Socials as well. So thank you everybody so much.